The so-called Russian dossier was compiled by this man, former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele. He got this information from various Russian contacts, some of whom he paid for their info. Steele was working at the time for a company called Fusion GPS. In January, BuzzFeed News released a copy of the dossier. It contained as yet unproven allegations.
If I listen long enough to you.
Dossier, as you know, is a collection of research compiled by a former British intelligence officer, Christopher Steele, for a firm called Fusion GPS.
I'll find a way to believe.
And on the surface, this looks like really red-hot stuff. I will tell you the amount of it that's been verified by U.S. intelligence agencies or by NBC News is very thin. We have no way of knowing if anything in it is true or if this document is itself some kind of plant or dirty trick. If it is true, of course, and Donald Trump is a Russian agent and knows he is one, that's the story of the century.
A little thing called the Christopher Steele dossier, the dossier with Trump and the Moscow prostitutes and the bathroom stuff.
After the FBI corroborated the details on their own, so they second sourced, the dossier has been corroborated by the intelligence community. The only part that you're talking about, the National Enquirer part of it, which is something that CNN did not report, is the most salacious stuff. That's never been corroborated.
Allison,
but the rest of it, in terms of all of the contacts between high-level Trump folks and Russians, all of that actually has been corroborated by the intelligence folks.
Both in general and particular, based on our own reporting and word from numerous official sources, the dossier, in fact, is far from bogus, as the president claims. In fact, U.S. investigators have corroborated portions of the dossier, specifically that some of the meetings and conversations detailed in the dossier took place on the dates and in the places as described.
It confirmed yet another critical detail in the Steele dossier.
So he's a very credible person. He's a person who our law enforcement community and our national security community have relied on for analysis and information.
Author of this dossier was a well-known and well-regarded, accepted source of information. He had been with British intelligence, he was respected, and so of course it made sense that if he came up with some information, it would be investigated.
And because they say the memos are nothing but trash, which is not true, it shows that this investigation has been poisoned from the start.
And also says that in the year that this dossier has been public now, none of it has ever been proven to be disinformation.
Considering that it was only offered as a preliminary intelligence survey, I think the report's held up damned well.
Been bouncing around for several months now. There have been a lot of allegations. I would even call them rumors at this stage.
Enough of this raw intelligence is checked out that I would imagine that this dossier was incredibly useful to Bob Mueller.
Let's remember how the Fusion GPS document got into the bloodstream in the first place. It was John Brennan, the CIA director for President Barack Obama, infused that document, which has now been proven to be false. None of the information in the Trump dossier has checked out and been independently verified. CBS News, who is no conservative publication, has checked it out. They found several things that were actually outright false. Michael Cohen, Trump's own attorney, had to produce dozens of documents to show that he himself was not where the Trump dossier said he was.
Okay, you're not going to get derailed into a whole debate about the dossier because this.
I wanted to make the point that some of it has been corroborated,
right,
but far from all of it. Do you think more or most of it is true, or would we know that by now?
Well, I don't know that.
And this dossier, which includes some salacious things that have not been confirmed.
This discredited dossier, which was paid for.
But it hasn't been discredited. In fact, it's been the opposite. It's been corroborated. Yes.
Really? Oh, okay.
You're asked your intel community.
I don't know that.
To simply call it bogus, as the president did again today, is to call the work of so many intelligence, counterintelligence, and other career public servants bogus.
I don't know that.
Is concerned. How important of a piece of evidence is this to your investigation?
That is an important piece of evidence, only in the sense of some of the accusations that are out there, and to be able to verify sources. Currently, it's unverified.
And that they've assembled this file, and that they have evidence to back it up, and that he effectively fell victim to a Russian trap. This is the allegation. I've heard these allegations for a long time. I haven't been able to prove any of it. I've called leading experts. I've tried to chase it down in this country, and I'm not the only one.
As it relates to the Steele dossier, unfortunately, the committee has hit a wall.
The FBI investigation did not begin because of opposition research.
Now, the memos themselves are not what triggered the FBI investigations.
Those sources say that the FBI Director James Comey has cited the dossier in some of his briefings to members of Congress in recent weeks as one of the sources of information that the Bureau used to bolster its investigation, to monitor Page's communications.
Still, the dossier was not, as the president suggests, the central basis for going after his campaign. He seems to be conflating it.
In fact, this dossier, the basis for a warrant to spy on Americans associated with Donald Trump's campaign with President
I know some Republicans, you've been reporting as well as the president, claimed the Steele dossier is the basis for the FBI's probe into Russia's election meddling and the question of collusion with the Trump campaign. But according to this explosive report from you and your colleagues today, that's not true.
It wasn't the basis for the FBI investigation. There were several things that were involved, but primarily it was information from George Papadopoulos. As you said, he was drinking in a bar with the top Australian diplomat.
Make it a fucking fortune.
And Trump-supporting Republicans in Congress have since tried to make that dossier itself a scandal. This New York Times story explains what did lead to the FBI counterintelligence investigation. George Papadopoulos, who's now cooperating with the Mueller investigation, he got drunk.
It's good to see you. Good to see you. What are you doing here, man? The real people are in there.
He told a top Australian diplomat that Russia had dirt on Hillary Clinton and thousands of stolen Democratic emails.
Oh, all those three things right now, baby. Let's go.
Did the FBI start their investigation before they knew about the Steele dossier, or do you know?
We do not believe that, as we reported, it was not at all the predicate for the investigation.
The hard part is we don't know who paid for it still. We still don't have all the sources and the facts.
The committee cannot really decide the credibility of the dossier without understanding things like who paid for it, who are your sources and subsources.
Breaking news, CNN learning tonight that Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee helped fund the research which led to the controversial and...
Source confirms to CNN that the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee helped fund research that led to the now infamous Russia dossier. The Washington Post first broke this story.
And yes, Fusion was paid by the DNC and the Clinton campaign for its work. But
a top lawyer for the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign continued paying Fusion GPS, and that's when the Steele dossier was compiled.
The DNC and Hillary Clinton campaign had such sanctimonious denial about this for all this time. If it was leaked or known that they funded this report in any way, that would go against their entire narrative of saying that Trump colluded with the Russians and that's how he won this election. So that would debunk.
But it wasn't colluding, it was research.
The Post didn't dig this up. That's the nasty truth of all of this. This is not journalism. This is the House Intel Committee chairman, Devin Nunes, who's recused himself, got this tax information and gave it to the Washington Post and said, here, print this. So Devin Nunes wants all of the tax records released by Fusion GPS.
But at the same time, the Democrat National Committee was paying Christopher Steele to put together an opposition research document.
Say now that Democrats put money behind this dossier, which includes...
With respect to the dossier itself, the key thing is, it doesn't matter who paid for it.
It's part of the smear. They have this conspiracy theory that somehow, Democrats who paid for the research that went into the memos, which is true, that the memos themselves triggered the FBI investigation.
The information in it, some of it is actually checked out. And so if, in fact, that document contains relevant and valid information showing that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia or worked with Russian operatives in order to distort the results of the 2016 election, who cares whether the Oppo research for it was paid by both a Republican and a Democrat?
Someday somebody's going to tally up the cost of that particular illusion.
I haven't been able to prove any of it.
We had some concerns about it from the standpoint of its sourcing, which we couldn't corroborate. Unfortunately, the committee has hit a wall.
Still I look to find a reason to believe